Oh, Lord.
Okay, Madam Mayor, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good evening. I'd like to welcome our visitors and those that are watching to our special meeting this evening. At this time, I'd like to call the meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Mayor Bennett,
Here.
Vice Mayor Pardon,
Here.
Councilor Randolph,
Here.
Councilor Holloway,
Here.
Councilor Gore,
Here.
Councilor Denton,
Here.
Councilor Pelham.
Here.
Mayor Bennett, you have 7 present. You have a quorum.
Thank you. At this time, I would, Councilor Denton would lead us in prayer, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, led by Councilor Randolph.
Let us bow for a word of prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so very much for this gorgeous day that we have all enjoyed. We thank you for your many blessings that you bestow on us every single day. I pray you will guide each one of us as we go about doing your business, and to help us to make decisions for our city that are pleasing in your sight. For we ask all these things in your name's sake. Amen.
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 I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I will now turn the floor over to Mr. Altman.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council. The first item of business this evening is a discussion of a supplemental appropriation to the FY22 Hopewell Public School Systems budget. As we've discussed at the budget meeting last week and leading up to that, there were several items that the school had as their request for FY22, and we needed to provide some level of indication to schools as to what council would support in the upcoming year, given that the school year will begin next month, and there's teachers' contracts need to go out, and additionally, one of those items was the healthcare that schools needed to know would be covered. So those items that were outstanding and we had discussed were the city's share of the 5% raise provided by the state. That share of that 5% raise, the total amount of those dollars was $1.9 million, almost $2 million. Of that, the city's share is approximately $280,000. The other item was the class and comp study, phase 4 of the implementation, which was approximately $600,000. They had some changes to the number of days that the special education compliance officers worked, to increase from 210 to 230 days. That equated to a $30,000 increase. And I think, if I remember correctly, I think that was across 5 positions. The need to add 2 special education teachers at $120,000 total. And then the health insurance increase this year for the school system, which was almost $457,000. So we need to let them know. And through my discussions with members of council, I think all of those items were those that were supported. The one sticking item that we kept coming to is the implementation of the class and comp, and not wanting to speak for council, but I think what I heard consistently was, in a year when there's a 5% raise, it's difficult to do that and the raise, knowing that other people weren't going to be able to get as much of a raise through the process. So I've prepared a motion. Dr. Hackney and I worked over the last week and then today to button everything up. And then, of course, as things would happen, she caught the thing that I left out of the motion a little while ago. So what I did was prepare a motion for council's consideration this evening for council to make a commitment for supplemental appropriation at your July 13th meeting to fund the city's share of the 5% employee raise, the change in the special ed compliance officers' days of work, adding the 2 special education teachers, and the health insurance as one option. That total increase or supplemental appropriation would be $885,965. The change that would occur in both of the options would, the sentence would read, additionally, council will commit to providing additional supplemental appropriations to address the remaining balance of the FY22 school board budget request up to $1.2 million upon receipt and review of a report of the FY22 line item expenditures to date as of December 31st, 2021, and actual line item expenditures for FY19, FY20, and FY21. The second option of that motion is the same, except it adds as an additional item for purchase the Tyler Technologies Munis financial management system for schools. That's a $315,000 purchase, but it would put the city and the schools on the same financial management platform, our same program. That total supplement in July would be $1,201,085. Dr. Hackney has agreed, and I think through our conversations in the work sessions, there's this constant discussion about the $1 million savings, if you will. So we talked and agreed to make that first appropriations, first supplement, to allow them to move forward with these items that they have to have. The raises, take care of the teachers and everyone on staff. The second supplement would be after we receive that report, so we can see where we are with our expenditures during that time, where the schools are with their expenditures, and they've agreed to provide that history that council has asked for over a couple of meetings, along with the current year expenditures. So I think, and I won't speak for Dr. Hackney, but I think this has been a pretty easy kind of negotiation, if you will. I think we're all trying to accomplish the same thing and figure out a path to get there. And I certainly appreciate Dr. Hackney's willingness to sit down and talk and work through this and find a common ground and solution. So that's all I have. Certainly, if Dr. Hackney would like to make any comments, I'll turn the floor over to her.
Well, before you do, can you answer some questions before you turn it over to her?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Could you repeat one more time the verbiage with the supplemental for later this year in
Okay.
its entirety? Yeah.
So that second last paragraph that would read, additionally, City Council will commit to providing additional supplemental appropriations to address the remaining balance of the FY22 school board budget request up to $1.2 million upon receipt and review of a report of the FY22 line item expenditures to date as of December 31st, 2021, and actual line item expenditures for the FY19, 20, and 21 budgets.
Vice Mayor Parton and then Councillor Randolph. Okay. Vice Mayor had jumped off. Councillor Randolph.
That verbiage is different than what we have this afternoon.
Yes, and that was an item that
Yeah.
Dr. Hackney and I discussed putting in the motion, and then when I sent it out, I had forgot to put that in the motion, and she looked at it and reviewed it and contacted me right prior to the meeting.
So not having that in writing and listening to it twice, we are committing to address in December, once we get more than just a more detail on where the spending is being done, to fund the schools up to how much? 8 million?
Well, it would be 1.2.
Because we're doing 800,000. Or what if we fund the second amount? I mean, that's going to be the higher of the two, because we only have so much to work with. So if we picked the second choice, we wouldn't fund as much. But it's committing us to nothing but looking at costs and where the school system is at that point in time, correct?
Yes, ma'am. I think that was the reason that we had the up to language is we don't
Okay.
know what that number will look like at this
Okay.
point. But we have, I mean, we kind of have a commitment to making sure that one of our subordinate organizations, and I don't need to mean use of subordinate in a bad way, but it's a component unit of our budget and a component unit of our audit, has the funding to make sure that they can get it through the end of the year. And I think the thought process here would be that if, let's say, this report comes out and we get the expenditures through December 31st, and we're all sitting back and looking at it, and it says, hey, it looks like we're going to be on target to save $1 million this year. That maybe that brings back the amount as opposed to 1.2. Maybe it's 1 or 8. I don't know, but that language is that 1.2 would be the difference, more or less, in what their baseline was last year minus the additional increases. So if you chose the second option, either way, I think that munis cost is something that we've got to look at helping with, because at the end of the day, all the money's coming from the same place. I mean, whether
Right.
we fund
Right.
it or schools fund it, it's all coming from us anyway, from a local, because I'm pretty sure Dr. Hackney can tell me if I'm wrong, but feds nor the state are going to pay for an upgrade to the financial management system. So that's something that's got to come locally. So
Right.
we're going to have to
I
deal
got
with
that.
that.
I just don't like having something that we're getting ready to vote on language wise that I can't see and wasn't prepared for it. So I'm just trying to make sure that we're not committing that we have to spend a certain amount of money, but that the commitment is simply that we're going to be looking at it again in December with the schools to find out what their needs are at that point in time for the remaining funds that have not been spent at that point in time.
Yes, I think your assessment's correct. And if Dr. Hackney, I think that's what our intention was when we brought this forward, that we would be able to sit down and look at what those expenditures were and be able to move forward at that time. And again, the up to number doesn't tie you to the 1.2. It just brings you that's the differential of where we are, but we'll know where we're better at after the first half of the year with expenditures.
And Mayor Bennett, could I also respond to Council Randolph?
Yes, ma'am.
I think I might have a little bit of a different perspective, obviously coming from my lens, that might help. I felt very strongly, and March was very gracious. I approved the conversation back and forth earlier and missed it. And it was my fault that the change was so late because I missed it. But here's my concern with that not being in there is our school board budget as adopted and presented is built upon that original request. I don't know what my budget's going to look like December 31st. It's not a simple, we spend the same amount of money every month for 12 months and we can well predict, we can certainly project, but that we can well predict anything. So it was important to me so that I didn't have to go back to my board. And I know how my board feels about this is, if we don't get the money, then we reduce our budget accordingly. That was one factor. The other was I need to protect my school board from any perception that we've overspent our budget. And, if we have to come back to you without the language and the acknowledgement that we're still short 1.1 million from level funding, if you take the surplus that you have graciously allowed us to take back and continue to build our budget upon, we could be short. And so those two factors were, from my lens, made it important for us to acknowledge, number one, that we're still 1.2, 1 point, whatever it is, below what the budget was built upon, and without having to go back and cut that from our budget moving forward, we felt like that was the safest sort of middle ground. It certainly gives the council the leeway to not give all of that. But it also provides us a little bit of a safety net that, our budget is built upon that money, and without a commitment to give it to us if we need it, I don't think that would be prudent. And I certainly don't think I could make that recommendation or support that recommendation without going back to my school board.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. And I appreciate that. And what I'll say is, I don't speak for the rest of council. This is just my opinion. I don't have any problem with the language being added. I just wanted to be sure what the language said. We're going to vote on something, and I did not want to commit to language that said we were going to give you all of the money,
Understand?
when in fact what I had asked for previously was costs of spending, because each year we get one page that tells us what you all want. And personally, I would like to see more than that. I think your board probably gets more than that in making your budget. And, we expect more than that from, and I know what's been done in the past, and I understand why it's done, but I'd like that the schools and council work more together to come up with funding for the schools so that we understand it better, and that you all, feel more comfortable with where we're going. That's my goal. And so I appreciate you all adding the language and making sure that the language is in there so we can come back in December and council can have the ability to look at costs that you all will provide us at that point in time. And we will be able to look at actuals, and which is what I would like to see as someone that, has to try and fund everything for the city and spend our money wisely. And certainly education is a priority, but we still have to do it in a way that makes sense to me, at least for me. Okay.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
I appreciate both you and March working through this, and I'll stop now so other council members can have their say so.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Parton, before I call on you, have your hand raised to make a motion?
Yes, that's what I
Okay.
plan on
If
doing.
it's possible, could you hold on that? Because I see Councilor Gore's hand is up, and I'm assuming she may have questions prior to throwing an action on the floor. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
All right, thank you. Councilor Gore?
Thank you. I do have a few questions to get clarity on what's happening. So, I knew that we were going to be talking about the school board interviews for appointment, and then I heard that there was something going on with the budget, but I really have not been able to get clarity on exactly what transpired to get us to this point. So I do have a list of questions, but the first thing is, I don't understand how such a big addition to the school's budget was not included when the budget was adopted. Can I get some clarity on that?
So what we've done, as you know, over the past few years is use the surplus that the schools have returned to us to help with their appropriation. So that's the same process we're doing this year. Those funds would be returned, and then we'll do a supplemental appropriation in July. What happened with regard to bring us here tonight is last week when we made the motion to adopt the budget, there wasn't any indication provided as to what of the new requests from schools council would be willing to fund, allowing them to move forward with getting their teacher contracts out, having health insurance and the like. So this evening, what we needed to do was provide indication to schools. We'll make the supplemental appropriation for you in July that will cover the cost of the following items, as we've done the past 2 years, as we work to get out of the I don't want to call it a hole, but as we work to get out of our audit situation and get everything caught up so we know where we are, this kind of continues that process that we've been using the past few years.
Yes, but when we adopt the budget, the school's budget, whatever our terms are agreed upon is incorporated in the city's operational budget when we adopt it. I don't recall us having to go back in a separate instance and doing what we're doing now, even in the past 2 years with the surplus funds.
Well, last year and the year before, we had a lot of discussion about the return of the $5 million. So we actually had a special meeting with school board and council and closed. Last year, we had an agreed upon agreement to do it prior to the budget being adopted. So then we did do the appropriation in July. It's not January. This year, when the motion was made last week, there was no. And I had talked leading up to that in the meeting about, hey, we need to provide an indication because wasn't sure where everybody was with regard to the school items, but there wasn't any indication provided that we made a motion in a second and we adopted a budget without providing any indication of what we would do from a supplemental appropriation perspective for their budget. So that's what drives us here.
Okay. So my next question is in regards to Munis. I do support us moving forward with Munis, with the schools for us to be on the same financial system. And I know we've talked about that, but I don't recall council making a definitive decision that we would require that to be a part of this funding request for this year. When was that determination made?
So I don't think, there was discussion through, we've had discussion across the last year, this year, and even at one of our work sessions with schools regarding Munis and their desire or not willingness to do it in schools that indicated that they're all on board with implementing Munis. So when I talked to counselors about where they were with the school board budget, one of the issues that came up is, well, what are we going to do about Munis? So I've just provided two options this evening. Option one doesn't have Munis. Option two has Munis, if that's what council wants to do to move forward. So schools can start the implementation process, purchase it, and start working on it earlier. And I'm not in no way, shape, or form suggesting that their FY22 budget will be in Munis. No way. I think maybe earliest you work through the training on some of the things this year and you test run it next year's budget and you run it concurrently with their system that they have now so that there's no hiccups along the way. So that's how Munis got in there, was some discussion and knowing that was an issue that's been out there. So I offered as second option if council wanted to entertain that.
Okay, well, I just need clarity from Dr. Hackney in regards to this, because what I recall when we met with the school board to talk about their budget, yes, some of us brought up Munis, but like I said, it was never a definitive decision by the collective or the majority of council. So it'd be interesting to know who brought this up to the point where it was elevated to be put in here as a recommendation tonight. But aside from that, or even how many people brought this up, but aside from that, Dr. Hackney, correct me, I may be wrong going off of memory at this point. When you asked for the 1.8 savings to be put into this year's budget, that did not include Munis, right? And so this $300,000 expense, was there something taken out? Or you understand what I'm asking you? Because I could have swore it was like 1.8 requests flat out without Munis. So how are you doing that? But then you have a new $300,000 request for Munis.
I do understand your question, and I actually appreciate it, because that, as I think we briefly talked about in one of our last meetings together around the budget, we did not know that was the, I mean, specifically that was the sentiment of council. We are, as Mark said, totally on board. I can't wait to have the same finance system that they talk to each other, and it's going to solve a lot of our problems, to include some of your concerns that we can't find exactly consistently a trend in where we have surplus each year. But no, that was not built in. We weren't aware of that. And my understanding, and I think I'm saying the same thing that Mark was saying, my understanding was that if that was the sentiment of city council, that council would pay for it, and that would be above and beyond our request for the 1.8 which is now 1.1 because you've committed, or 1.1, 1.2, because you've committed to the 800 and something thousand for those bulleted items. So that was not included in our budget proposal.
So, all right, so the 885, and while we're talking, can someone please put up the agenda packet so that way the public can see what we're talking about, and then we can also be on the same page visibly with what we're discussing, please. But so the $885,000 that we're saying that we're committing to, that technically hasn't happened yet because that wasn't included in the motion, correct, Mr. Altman?
That's correct, Ms. Gore.
Okay, so technically speaking, we're looking at 1.8 flat out that needs to be adopted or approved in some shape or form. Of that, are you saying, Dr. Hackney and Mr. Altman, that there is an additional 300,000 on top of that? Because if that's the case, that's not how I read option 2.
So the cost of Munis would be in addition to those costs, because that wasn't one of the budget items that school board proposed. So that would be in addition to anything that council did at this point in time. And we're breaking the supplemental appropriations into 2 pieces to allow them to move forward with basically the 886, and then come back at the later date with the data. But you're correct. The addition of Munis is a plus to that number. If that's something that council wanted to entertain now, you could. If not, we can put that off and make that part of another budget request. But the thought was, the more we put it off, the longer implementation would be.
No. I don't disagree. It needs to be done. I want to be very clear that I support Munis. And if you recall, like not you personally, but I brought this up when I requested that joint meeting with the school board, and I specifically brought up Munis and seeing if there is a level of support there. But in terms of the math, if the way option 2 is written, it has Munis as a bullet point for 315, but yet it has a total as 1.2. So I just want to understand, is it really 1.8 plus the 315? And if that is the case, then we're talking about $2.1 million total, not
Right.
1.8.
So what we were trying to accomplish with the $1.2 figure is kind of that, as Dr. Hackney, it's the 1.1 or 1.2 that is the dollar amount that we supplemented last year that gives them that base. So that's what that 1.2 is. So that would be in addition to the 1.2 total if you did Munis. If you take the Munis out, then it's the 800,000 additional requests plus the base that they had last year. So that's where we're at, and that's where the question and the reporting comes into play to see, okay, well, is that, as we've had these discussions over time, is that 1.1 900? We don't know, what does that look like from an expenditure perspective? So that gives the schools commitment to provide that data and that historical information, so that can be reviewed, and then council and schools can talk about, okay, what does the next supplemental look like to get them through to the end of the year? But the 1.2 is that number that provides that base from where we were last year. Because I think it was, and Dr. Hackney, it was 1.1 and change. I mean, it was 1.136 something. So, that 1.2 kind of gets us back level what that base was last year after the supplemental appropriation in July.
Okay, I have 2 last questions. Again, looking at the list, I see that the class and comp is removed. And from my understanding, that was the thing that was causing some hesitancy from my recollection with members of council. So if that has been removed from this discussion, again, I lean to go back to what is the purpose of doing this divide and give money now, give money later, if the request is, number 1, less than what they originally asked for, and then 2, everything up here we say that we're supporting. What is the purpose in dividing this out?
I think the purpose is to see where we are with expenditures as of December 31st. It'll be halfway through the fiscal year, and provide a good balance and a balancing point to say, this is what the projections look like through the end of the year. Because it may be that as we've talked each year there's savings in schools, and whether that savings is, as we're talking about this go around with the 18 budget, 1.8 million, or the little bit less than $900,000 that was discussed during the budget process for the current year, that will give you an idea of where we are, where schools are, where they are, and just at mid-year, and what that projection looks like. So there may be some savings. So it may be that you don't have to do 1.2, maybe you do 1, or it's 900. We don't know, but that would be the point of looking at that. And it was an item that Dr. Hackney committed to do to help get those numbers for you. That council, I think
Yeah.
our
I asked her
conversation, that we know, and she knows that issue has to be answered at some point in time, that council's not going to let that issue go. And I think for her own board, it would be answered. So that kind of provides a middle ground, breaking it into, lets her move forward with what she needs to do right now, and then coming back, because we know that schools, I hope Dr. Hackney doesn't spend $13 million in 6 months. So we know that there will be money rolling into the second half of the year that can get, we can get through half of the year and no worries, and then make that additional appropriation at that time. And Dr. Hackney, if I'm rambling, forgive me, but if you want to provide any input, please.
how this will impact you.
I would, if that's okay. And I appreciate the opportunity. I want to clarify just one thing before we move on. You are our financial purse. You can see any of our records and reports that you want to. It's public information. You don't need my permission. You don't need that of the school board. We have nothing to hide, and we're happy to share that. If I misunderstood Councilor Randolph's, request, the request for that information was never made to me in the form. Let me back up. March talked to me about the sentiment that the council wanted to see that. But I never processed that you wanted to see it before you approved this budget. So that's why I think or at least that's what I'm assuming is why the plan to divide it up so that you have 6 months to see that. I will tell you that, hurts a little bit, because it feels like council is not trusting us to spend your money prudently. And I think we've shown you over the past 20 plus years that we are being very conservative with the money that you give us. I did offer a recommendation with the presentation of our budget that we anticipate $1 million savings this year. And we only added in the 1.1 because it's never been restored. Our budget has always been based upon that amount of money. I did also explain to council at our last meeting that we were together that as much as I'd like to tell you that, here's where we find the surplus and it trends that way every single year, that is not the case. And you'll see that when you see I thought I told you that, but you'll see it when you do your own analysis. Some years it's in substitutes, some years it's in fuel, some years it's in contracted special education services. We don't have logical trend there. And our budget is built honestly and sincerely based on the expectation that we're going to spend that money. This year was extremely unique. And honestly, we probably wouldn't have a bit of surplus had this not been a COVID year, because the anticipated $1 million surplus that we expect to, I guess, now have to give back to you at the end of this fiscal year is logically about fuel. It's about utilities. It's about we've not used one substitute teacher because everybody's been virtual. So had we used those like a traditional year, it looks like we've tightened that potential surplus. But I would still not argue, but I have to be honest with you and tell you that to not receive the entire request or know what the money we're going to get is July 1 is a little disconcerting. And my understanding is it's because you think we have surplus. These are my words, not March's, but you think we have surplus that at the end of December, when you review all these expenditures, which I think is what we have a school board for, there might be some money there that you can not have to commit. So I just want to make sure that we're all clear. We need to know what money you're going to give us July 1. We will, I mean, obviously we don't have any choice but to agree with this if council votes for this and do our best to obviously provide you accurate figures. But I think, again, it's the school board's job to analyze what we need and to ask of that of our city council. That's what we've already done. And it's logically explained in that it's essentially level funding with the exception of those bulleted items, because it was money that was in our budget before that council took and, historically in the last couple of years allowed us to cover it with surplus money. We have surplus money this year that I can tell you exactly where it's coming from, that we're going to give back to you. So I'm willing to do this and convince our school board of this, but no, it's not ideal. It's not ideal not to know what our revenue is going to be for 6 months.
Thank you, Dr. Hackney. My last question, Mr. Altman, just for clarity, we were talking about the 5% with the either or, and if to use the 5%, and then if the class and comp amount was higher, then to take from that. So I see nothing related to class and comp. So is that completely off the table? And then with the 315 for the munis, clearly that's going to come from our general fund. If we have the resources to do that, why aren't we investing that into the positions that we need in this budget cycle?
So the class and comp was the one item that the majority of council members that I talked to weren't supportive of. So that's why that's out.
Okay.
The 315 wouldn't come from the general fund. It would be coming from unassigned fund balance.
Okay, I'm sorry. If it's coming from unassigned, then it's 315,000 that we didn't really, as a group, discuss doing. I know you said you got it from conversation with council members, which is why it's up here. But I guess the same sentiment can be said when we're talking about positions like fire, police, the fire department, the broadband person, public works, and some of these other positions. We could have just did those things in those positions as well. But I guess the argument would be, well, this is a one-time cost. But I mean, essentially, if you take probably 2 positions, that's a couple years worth of that, even though it's not one-time cost. So, I mean, I do have some reservations regarding that when I can see that there's clear positions, in my opinion, that we need right now.
Yeah. And I understand what you're saying. I'm very reluctant to go into unassigned fund balance for reoccurring costs. So that's where it would be the one-time cost of purchasing units would be. That's where I would think you would take it from.
Okay. Thank you very much, both of you all.
Mhm.
You, Vice Mayor Parton.
Thank you. I move that City Council accept option 2 that will make a supplemental appropriation to fiscal year 22 school board budget to support the following items: the city's share of the 5% employee pay raise, change special education compliance officers from 210 to 230 days, to hire 2 new special education teachers to cover the health insurance increase, and to purchase the Tyler Technologies Munis financial management system for a total supplemental appropriation of $1,201,085 at the July 13, 2021 City Council meeting. And additionally, City Council will commit to providing additional supplemental appropriation to address the remaining balance of the fiscal year 2022 school board budget request upon
Up to
$1.2 million upon receipt and review of a report of a fiscal year 22 line item expenditures to date as of December 31st, 2021, and an actual line item expenditures for the fiscal year 19, 20, and 21 budgets.
Second.
Motion's been made by Vice Mayor Parton, seconded by Counselor Randolph. I do not see any hands for discussion. Roll call.
Counselor Randolph,
Yes.
Counselor Holloway,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Pardon,
Yes.
Counselor Gore,
No.
Counselor Denton,
Yes.
Counselor Pelham.
I'll be abstaining from this vote.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Bennett, you have 4 yes, 1 no, and 1 abstaining. The motion passes.
Thank
It's
you.
only 6 people. You forgot Mayor Bennett.
Oh my goodness, Mayor Bennett, somehow you got left off of this sheet. I am so
Yes.
sorry. So Mayor Bennett,
Yes.
thank you. So thank you, Counselor Randolph. You have 5 yes, 1 no, and 1 abstaining. So the motion passes.
Thank you. At this time, I would like to ask if there is a motion to go into closed meeting.
I move that we go into closed meeting pursuant to Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711A1 to conduct interviews for upcoming school board positions.
Second.
Motion's been made by Vice Mayor Parton, seconded by Counselor Randolph. Roll call.
Mayor Bennett,
Yes.
Counselor Randolph,
Yes.
Counselor Holloway,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Parton,
Yes.
Counselor Gore,
Yes.
Counselor Denton,
Yes.
Counselor Pelham.
Yes.
Mayor Bennett, you have 7-0. Motion
Thank
passes.
you. Thank you, Dr. Hackney, for your
Thank
time.
you all.
for being
Appreciate
here.
you. Appreciate you so much. Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Thank you.
you, Dr. Hackney.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Mayor Bennett, the first interview starts at 7:30 and the second one at 8 o'clock. And they should be in the waiting room for you to let them enter at their times.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Molly.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So we leave this one here.
Waiting for one more, I think, unless I. Hi, Ms. Bess. We're just waiting for Council Gore to come back out, and maybe she is here. 'Cause I saw somebody pop up.
There she is. Okay.
Okay. All right. Is there a motion to come out of closed meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made by Vice Mayor Parton and
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
and seconded, I think, by Councilor Randolph, I heard. I don't see any hands for discussion. Roll call?
Mayor Bennett,
Yes.
Counselor Randolph,
Yes.
Counselor Holloway,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Parton,
Yes.
Counselor Gore,
Yes.
Counselor Denton,
Yes.
Counselor Pallam.
Yes.
Mayor Bennett, you have 7 to 0. Motion passes, and I will read the certification.
Thank you.
Certification pursuant to Virginia Code 2.2-3712D, where only public business matters, 1, lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements, and 2, identified in the closed meeting motion discussed in closed meeting.
Roll call?
Counselor Randolph, I'm sorry, Mayor Bennett,
Yes.
Counselor Randolph,
Yes.
Counselor Holloway,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Parton,
Yes.
Counselor Gore,
Yes.
Counselor Denton,
Yes.
Counselor Pallam.
Yes.
Mayor Bennett, you have 7 to 0.
Thank you. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Max,
So move.
Hello?
Yes.
Yes. Second.
second. Okay.
I don't know what happened, but okay.
I'm sorry. Who had who did the motion to?
I think it was Janice.
Okay, Counselor Denton
I tried.
made the motion to adjourn and seconded by Counselor Randolph. Roll call?
Mayor Bennett,
Yes.
Counselor Randolph,
Yes.
Counselor Holloway,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Parton,
Yes.
Counselor Gore,
Yes.
Counselor Denton,
Yes.
Counselor Pallam.
Yeah.
Mayor Bennett, you have 7 to 0. Motion